Kern Valley State Prison first opened its doors in 2005. Today houses over 3,100 minimum, medium, and high security custody inmates. Kern Valley State Prison has slowly become one of the most violent prisons in the state of California. And such was the case just 2 days ago when on May 21st, 2025, at around 1:41 p.m., two incarcerated individuals, William A. Nestler III and Edward R. Holden III, allegedly attacked fellow incarcerated member Timothy Whalen. And although staff would respond, first using verbal orders and then chemical agents to stop the attack, staff would then activate 911 and transport Whalen, who sustained injuries consistent with an improvised weapon being used in the incident, to the prison's triage and treatment area. He was pronounced deceased at 2:12 p.m.
A convicted killer serving time at Kern Valley State Prison in Delano has died after he was attacked by two inmates. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, 56-year-old Timothy Whalen was attacked with improvised weapons around 1:40 yesterday afternoon. He died about a half hour later. CDCR has identified the two attackers as 43-year-old William Nestler III and 35-year-old Edward Holden III. Prison officials are investigating the incident with the Kern County District Attorney's Office.
Of insanity. And as Angie Crouch tells us, there are still plenty of people who think she did the right thing.
I never met her face to face, but I've seen her on TV. They said she shot a man for messing with her boy, sent him to eternity.
Nestler moved through the crowd like a folk hero today, greeting supporters, kissing children, and having her picture taken. All this while musicians entertained the group with one of 7 songs written about Nestler's life.
The last thing he saw was the smoke from his Elliott gun.
Many of Nestler's supporters have never even met her, but continue to turn out at rallies like this one.
Not to condone a homicide that was committed by Ellie Nestler, but to at least let society know that this is part of the tragedy that can happen when a child has been sexually violated.
I don't support violence or anything like that, but I really feel that whenever you push to a certain point, you just...
This is somebody who's
I don't know, I think I would do the same thing in her situation.
Nestler says she's overwhelmed by the support, but anxious about the outcome of the trial.
Yeah, I have to be nervous. You know, I'm facing 30 to life. You know, that's something to be nervous about, but I feel pretty confident. Whether I go to jail or whether I get an acquittal, I want to see the laws change for innocence.
The defense portion of the trial is expected to resume on Tuesday. Ellie Nestler is adamant about wanting to take the stand in her own defense. If her attorneys agree, she'll likely testify late in the week. In Sonora, Angie Crouch, KOVR 13 News.
Now, admittedly, some of Nestler's support has fallen off a bit since she admitted using drugs before the shooting. And last week, jurors heard conflicting testimony about how Nestler got the gun that was used to kill Daniel.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel today. It means a lot that you are here. Really quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to check the video out. I really hope you do enjoy it. And if you do, go check out some of my other content. Leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe if you do enjoy some of my videos. And if you are a returning individual to this channel, then thank you, because you already know how much you mean to me. Again, I am really humbled by the success that we've shared so far in 2025. As I've stated many times before, the goal for this year was 20,000 subscribers, and I believe we will hit that hopefully in June. So again, thank you for everyone who's continued to support the channel, continued to help me grow. Really, without you guys, I am nothing. All right, so today we're going to be covering a murder that just took place 2 days ago in Kern Valley State Prison. Laughing a little bit to myself, because sometimes I get these comments that are like, hey, Greenlit, can you please do a video that's somewhat recent? So this is for everybody out there giving me a hard time. I'm doing the most recent murder to take place within the CDCR. This was a pretty violent killing. The 3 individuals in this case are all convicted murderers, and they all have very, very interesting backgrounds, to say the least. We're going to get into those here in just a few minutes. But let's start first with the article from CDCR's main page with a breakdown of the case. California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation officials are investigating the May 21st, 2025 death of an incarcerated person at Kern Valley State Prison as a homicide. At 1:41 p.m., incarcerated persons William A. Nestler III and Edward R. Holden III allegedly attacked incarcerated person Timothy Whalen. Staff immediately responded, first using verbal orders and then chemical agents to quell the attack. Staff activated 911 and transported Whalen, who sustained injuries consistent with an improvised weapon being used in the incident, to the prison's triage and treatment area, where he was pronounced deceased by medical staff at 2:12 p.m. No staff or additional incarcerated people were injured, and 2 improvised weapons were found at the scene. Nesler and Holden have been moved to restricted housing pending an investigation. Officials limited population movement to facilitate the investigation being conducted by KVSP Investigative Services Unit and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. The Office of the Inspector General was notified, and the Kern County Coroner will determine Whalen's cause of death, even though we already know what that is. Probably has something to do with those 2 improvised weapons that they found. Now, again, these guys' background, violent. All of these guys are career criminals, and we're going to get into that with some very good detail, to say the least. Whalen, our victim in this case, 56 years old, was most recently received from Los Angeles County on July 16th, 2007, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder. He was also sentenced by an LA County court on March 14th, 2005 to 2 years, 8 months for discharge of a firearm at an unoccupied vehicle dwelling and possession of a firearm by a felon to be served concurrently. Also picked up charges while behind bars. He was sentenced by Imperial County on December 3rd, 2009 to 1 year for possession and manufacture of a deadly weapon by a prisoner, and again by a Kern County court on May 14th, 2014 for possession of a controlled substance and then prison offense as a second striker. Now, William A. Nestler, this guy's life plays out like a movie. I could do a whole video on this guy, and I'll show you why, or tell you why in just a few minutes. 43 years old at the time of this attack, was received from Tuolumne County on June 20th, 2005, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for first-degree murder and 3 years for manufacture, sale, or possession of a weapon to be served concurrently. While incarcerated, he was also sentenced by Sacramento County on July 17th, 2013 to 1 year for possession of a controlled substance in jail or prison, and by Del Norte County on April 25th, 2019 to 9 years for assault with a deadly weapon or force likely to cause great bodily injury, also an in-prison offense as a second striker. Edward Holden, 35 years old at the time of this attack, was most recently received from Solano County, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for first-degree murder with enhancements for intentional discharge of a firearm causing great bodily injury or death, discharge of a firearm, and use of a firearm. These guys are violent. All 3 of these guys are very violent. They're career criminals. They all have a history of just multiple convictions. And to be honest with you, all 3 of these guys' lives, you could kind of see them going down this path. In particular, Nestler, we're going to get to that. It's pretty sad. Just kind of the best word to describe his entire history leading up to this. But first, we're going to be talking about our victim in this case, Timothy Whalen, and his background. This is an article from July 20th, 2006. After 2 trials and almost 3 years, La Canada resident Timothy, and I might have said that wrong, La Canada resident Timothy Whalen, 38 years old, was convicted July 12th in San Fernando Superior Court on charges stemming from a fiery fatal car wreck that took the lives of 3 individuals on November 5th, 2003. In the early morning hours of that fateful day, 24-year-old Juan Tellez from Simi Valley, driving his 1988 Honda Accord, was traveling back from his mother's home with his 7-year-old daughter and 5-year-old son. They were heading westbound on the Ronald Reagan 118 freeway. California Highway Patrol investigator Charles Jensen was in charge of the reenactment during this case in the courtroom and the investigator of the crash. A little after 2 a.m., Jensen would say, Whalen was driving a 2003 black Corvette westbound on 118 near Luis Avenue exit. Whalen rear-ended the Honda. Both vehicles continued skidding way over 400 feet. The Honda went forward and hit the center divider wall, then bounced back to the right, rested in the number 4 lane, and then burst into flames. Tellez and his children were killed in the deadly fire and effectively burned to death. According to Jensen, Whelan's car had an event data recorder that recorded the vehicle's speed 5 seconds before the accident. And guess how fast he was going? 156 miles per hour. Whalen was traveling with a passenger at the time, Michael Whitaker, who was then 34 years old. And Whalen's blood alcohol was 0.26. And everybody probably already knows, but 0.08 is the legal limit. And it seems to always work out like that, right? In these DUI crashes, not always, but a lot of times. So, of course, you've got the driver and the passenger of the Corvette. They both survive. And meanwhile, this entire family and this 88 Honda burned to death. And it said that Whalen and Whitaker were both very combative with rescue personnel. And then it went into Whalen's background. At the time of the accident, he was out on bail for a separate charge of being in illegal possession of a firearm and shooting into an uninhabited dwelling in Reseda. He was later convicted on that charge. He also had prior convictions and had done state prison time in 1991 and 1995 on drug-related charges. Whitaker his passenger got convicted on charge of resisting an executive officer. In 2004, he gets sentenced to 1 year in LA County Jail on some probation time. But like I said in this first part of the article, Whalen had 2 trials. The first trial was a hung jury 11-1. And this is what's crazy. There was 1 juror that was predisposed to vote convict. So that means Whalen was 1 vote away from beating his case. But one juror held out, which I really don't know how or why. The only thing I could think of is maybe they thought murder was too strong of a charge. Let me know what you think down below. Please comment down below. Why do you think he almost beat that first case? But second trial, which I think anytime a case goes to a second trial, a second jury, I think it heavily favors the prosecution. The prosecution can see what they did wrong, what they need to clean up, and basically they get a second crack at it. And that's exactly what happened. And Whalen was convicted on 3 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of driving under the influence, causing great bodily injury, and it carries a 15 to life sentence. Well, he ended up getting that life with parole sentence. And then, like you see so often in California especially, these guys get locked up, they're already career criminals, and they just pick up more charges behind bars because you have to protect yourself, so you're going to make a weapon. Well, if you get caught making a weapon, that's another few years tacked on. They probably have drug and alcohol problems, so you get caught with controlled substances and stuff like that, you get another couple years tacked on. And that's how you end up burying yourself in the system. Okay, now, please pay attention to this, guys, because this is crazy. William Nestler III's background. Again, I feel like I could have done a whole video on this guy. This is an article, and again, he's a convicted killer as well. This is an article from July 29th, 2004, and it's titled, William Nestler, Still a Fugitive. William Nestler, a fugitive in connection with the beating death of an acquaintance, was once known as a young victim of S.A., whose vigilante mother walked into a courtroom and shot his accuser 5 times in the head 11 years ago. Again, so 2004, 11 years before that, 1993 is when his mom shot his then S.A. accuser in the head in a courtroom. It's like almost out of a movie. Since the acts that led to that day, Nestler's life has never been the same. Nestler, 23 at the time, has been in jail nearly 20 times in the past 5 years in cases ranging from complaints about his Rottweiler to robbery and drug charges, and now he is wanted for the murder for allegedly beating a disabled neighbor to death just an hour after completing a jail sentence for attacking the same neighbor in a dispute over tools. And he had said that as he's serving time for just beating his neighbor up, it said that while he was in jail for that, he was telling people, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to kill my neighbor as soon as I get out. And that's exactly what William Nestler III did. Authorities do not know where he is hiding, but they consider him armed and dangerous. And although they recognize that his upbringing played a role in his troubles, friends and family members said they were still surprised by the murder allegations. He was a great kid, said Sacramento bounty hunter Leonard Padilla, a family friend. I would never have believed it would come to something like this, though a lot of times there's a progression of activity. Padilla, who got to know the Nestler family more than a decade ago, said he's talked with an FBI agent about helping bring Nestler in safely if he could be persuaded to surrender. When Nestler was young, his parents left the fated gold rush towns of Sierra Nevada foothills in the hopes of striking it rich by mining for gold in Africa. That right there is crazy. Family members said the couple eventually split, and Ellie Nestler, William Nestler's mom, returned with William, known as Willie, and his sister to California. When Willie, and this is when things took a turn for the darkness, when he was 6 or 7 years old, he was allegedly assaulted by Daniel Driver at a Christian camp. God, something always like that crap happens. He said he didn't tell anyone for nearly a year because Driver had threatened to kill his family. At a Christian camp, you got a predator. It just pisses you off. After 2 years on the lam, Driver was arrested and brought to a courtroom on April 2nd, 1993 for a hearing on whether he would face trial on charges of assaulting Nestler and 3 other boys. Ellie Nestler, his mom, said her son could not testify because he was, quote, vomiting. She feared the twice convicted assaulter, for lack of a better word, would walk free. During a recess, she pulled a Raven .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol from the purse of her other sister, Jan Martinez, and shot driver dead in the head. He deserved to die, she told the police. And please pay attention to what she said right here because it gave me chills. Maybe I'm not God, but I'll tell you what, I'm the closest damn thing to it for all the other little boys. Good job, Ellie Nestler. She later said, my little boy can hold his head up now. He doesn't have to be afraid of Danny. During Ellie Nestler's trial, Martinez testified that the abuse changed her nephew from a very beautiful little kid into a mean little brat. By age 11, he had changed school 3 times and was spiteful and angry. Oh, that's crazy, man. And his mom ended up getting a manslaughter charge. She only did 3 years on 10. And they said it was because of some juror misconduct. I think she's a hero. And, like I said, I try to stay away from giving my opinion. But on this case, she's a hero. And William Nestler's mom should be recognized as such. But it affected William Nestler nonetheless. And from basically after that happened to him as a little boy, his life went downhill. William Nestler was chronically unemployed in recent years. Corey Nietrich said his father gave Nestler a little work helping tear down part of a former gravel plant next door to where Nestler lived. Although he stood 6'2", weighed 225 pounds, and was covered with tattoos of comic book characters, he was mostly just a shy observer who seemed out of place. Quote, he acted like a little kid. He'd come up and watch us. Quote, my dad always said he was like a 12-year-old in a 25-year-old body. Recently, Nestler had helped clean up his family's property in his mountainous area of California. David Davis, 45, disabled. Now, David Davis was his neighbor that he ended up being convicted of killing. David Davis, 45, disabled from a neck injury while working in oil fields in Wyoming, was hired to help clear the property, which had turned into a squatter's camp, according to Davis's mother, Rita Brown. Trouble came in late June when Davis accused Nestler of stealing his tools. Nestler attacked Davis and started beating him, police said. Quote, he's lucky I didn't kill him, Nestler allegedly told police. Nestler pled guilty to assault and was sentenced to 2 months in jail. He was released at 4 a.m. Sunday, and the alleged beating happened about an hour later. That's crazy. Relatives say they've heard from William Nestler a few times since he went on the run. Police put him on the wanted list, and they're urging him to turn himself into a local bounty hunter. So he does end up being caught. He ends up going to court. He ends up being convicted on May 24th, 2005. He's convicted of murder. And the next month, in June of 2005, he's given 25 to life. And then he commits more crimes behind bars. And then 2 days ago, he committed this, or allegedly committed this murder that we are now talking about, of Whalen. Okay, last guy. Edward Holden III. He's the most recent, he's the shortest tenured guy in the California prison system. This is an article from just 2 years ago, April 19th, 2023. A Solano County Superior Court jury on Wednesday found a 33-year-old man guilty of fatally shooting a transient woman in November of 2020 near the Vallejo waterfront. After deliberations in Department 7, jurors convicted Edward Robert Holden for the first-degree murder of Adrian Lucille Flores, who was 24 years old. And I put her and Edward's picture up side by side. The jury found that during the commission of the murder, Holden used a firearm to kill Flores, according to a press release from the Solano County District Attorney's Office. The jury also found the defendant guilty of unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon. According to court records, Holden murdered Flores on the night of November 15th after he lured Flores into his vehicle at a convenience store in Vallejo. He then drove to a dark and isolated area near the Vallejo waterfront, where he fired 2 fatal shots, abandoned her body, and fled the scene. At the time of her murder, Flores was a transient and, quote, struggling with addiction issues, according to the prepared statement. Defense attorney David Nelson asserted at trial that due to these circumstances, her death was inevitable, but jurors rejected the attorney's argument. The DA noted in the release. Jail records show Holden was arrested for the crime on February 23rd, 2021. That's a weird defense. So his attorney, Edward Holden's attorney, David Nelson, basically says that because she's a transient and struggling with drugs, that she was going to die no matter what. Oh, what? Ugh, that makes me mad reading that. I don't know why. So because somebody has drug problems that you're just, well, if my client didn't kill her, she was going to die no matter what. Ugh. That's crazy. Holden remains in custody in the Stanton Correctional Facility in Fairfield without bail and is scheduled to return to the courtroom for sentencing at 1:30 p.m. on July 14th in Vallejo, where he ends up getting sentenced to life. They all got life with the possibility of parole, but now it seems like Edward Holden and William Nestler will not be getting out ever. So there you guys have it. Absolutely crazy. The most recent murder within the CDCR. I don't see any gang ties, but just an absolutely crazy story with characters. And this is why I focus so much on doing these kinds of stories this year, because the most interesting part about this video, for me at least making it, isn't just the initial murder of Timothy Whalen. It's the background of all of them, of the victim and his two alleged attackers. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for the continued support. Until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.